to people, activities, and substances. Join us as we explore in detail how the wounded inner child continues to contaminate our adult lives.
Bradshaw on Homecoming is made possible by viewers like you and by Transamerica Fund Management, the mutual fund company that's been helping investors reach their financial goals for over 40 years. Additional funding is provided by the following organizations and individuals.
Good day, and welcome to the new series. I'm really excited about this series. I'm very grateful to PBS for putting this series on and allowing me to do it. It's a follow-up to the series on the family, which a lot of you have written me about and talked about, and I'm very excited that it had the kind of impact that it had, and I'm very grateful to public television for being able to put this kind of material on television. In that series, I talked about the family as a social system, using the idea of general systems theory, that everything is part of a whole and wholly a part and partly a whole, that we have a nervous system, a circulatory system, endocrine system, and yet I'm a whole human being, but I have all these systems. Well, families are like that too. So the whole idea of family systems is a very new idea of emotional health and emotional illness, that nobody gets emotionally ill alone, that it's always a contextual reality. Somebody has said it's a microsocial crisis. Emotional illness is a microsocial crisis, that somehow we've been affected by the system we're in. Now, I talked about family systems having rules, having roles that people play in it, and probably the most important thing that I underscored, and that I want to talk a little bit more about as we get into this new material, is the idea of rules. The rules that we have been using, I am going to suggest, are abusive rules. They're rules that have worked in the past. They have worked in times of survivalistic society, what Rianne Eisler calls the dominator society. Those rules at least worked. I don't say they were great or they were humane, but they worked. And what is the dominator society? It's that somebody has all the power. And in the past, it's been males. The beating of women and children is an ancient and pervasive tradition. The rule of thumb was how big your rod could be to beat your wife with or your children with. So this idea of one person having all the power and other people subjugated to that power. And then the other part of the rule was the idea of emotional repression. Emotional repression. In survivalistic times, or when you're in survival modes, it's good not to feel. So we've come out of traditions, many of you may have grown up with this, I was, don't be so emotional. Emotions are weak. That was also due philosophically to the rationalistic stuff. Hegel's phenomenology of mind, Descartes, I think, therefore I am. And all of these great philosophers certainly had an intellectual place for reason, but they really didn't have an existential place. And so we've inherited rules that we've all been raised with. And my thesis is that nobody has escaped some kind of wounding from these rules. Evidence for that. Pat Carnes at Golden Valley quotes 131 million addicts in the United States. Those are emotional problems. What we do with addictions is we mood alter emotions. And so when we talk about work addictions and sex addiction and alcohol addiction and drug addiction, we're talking about emotional disorder. The other rule was obedience without content. And we saw the intrinsic potential of that rule at Nuremberg, when these war murderers pleaded innocence on the basis of obedience to authority, or Jonestown, or My Lai. These are evidences. Or we've seen some of these public evangelistic TV evangelist scandals where you have whole families that are in this obedience without content. Whole groups of people that are dominated by obedience without content. This is very dangerous. It is enormously dangerous. I have talked to offenders. You're going to see in this series and in future programs, you're going to see people holding teddy bears and crying who were actually offenders. I've talked to offenders who tell me that when they were acting out, they would go and look for the most obedient child. So we really must understand, and I'm glad to be doing my series right here in San Francisco, where a lot of the early outcry in the 60s, there was an outcry and a protest about this kind of idea that one people, that one group of people have superiority over another group of people. Millions of people have died to make the world safe for democracy. And this is what we're talking about, is democracy. We fought and died for democracy, and yet we got families where somebody has all the power. And there's this hierarchy of madness. Daddy can get mad at anybody, Mom can get mad at anybody but Dad. You go right down to the youngest kid who can only torture gerbils or something. Believe me, I love animals, so don't write me a letter about this. It's just a joke. I'm just making a joke. But the idea is that this hierarchy of power, master-slave, repression of emotion, especially the emotion of anger and sexuality. So I want to talk about what happens when we grow up with rules like these. I've quoted Virginia Satir saying 96% of families are dysfunctional. People say, isn't that, did you say that? No, I didn't say that. I think they're all dysfunctional to some degree. We all come out of the same set of rules. So how can we not be? And I don't care about formal logic. All the birds could be flying in the wrong direction. That's possible. That is possible. So we want to look at what happens when a child is abused. I want to read you something from David Muir. That abuse is not natural, he says. That it does not appear spontaneously without contact or instruction from others. This means, of course, that the person involved with abuse could have been taught other behavior, that there are options which have been denied that person, and because of the narrowness and the one-dimensional quality of the world of abuse, I will argue that abuse represents a loss of knowledge about oneself and of the world and a loss of freedom. See, that is what I argued in the family series, that children are wounded because children don't know what normal is. How would you know what normal parenting is? All you know is what is told you as normal parenting. And then when the pain is so great, you move out of the pain because it's too hard to stay in yourself when you're in that pain, and then you forget. And all children idealize their parents. You can't not do it. I couldn't have called a meeting and said with my little bags packed, Dad, you're an alcoholic, Mom, you're a co-alcoholic, I'm moving down the street. I couldn't do that. I had to idealize them and make them okay and me bad. That's what children do. So the abuse lasts a lifetime. That's what we're understanding. And because the defenses that we develop are so powerful, they become automatic and unconscious, and by the time you get to be an adult, you forget. You forget what happened. See, and the most dramatic example of that is incest. where, working with a woman in her 60s, she's suddenly starting to get to memories of her incest. That's not uncommon. So in the most extreme forms of abuse, sexual abuse, we know that people can forget for 50 years. They can go 50 years without remembering this stuff. And so we've got to get it that the truth of our childhood is enormously important to us. We better find out the truth of our childhood because the child will remember. Here's Alice Miller, who I really dedicate this whole series to, because she has been the pioneering groundbreaker. The truth about childhood is stored up in our body and lives in the depth of our soul, she says. Our intellect can be deceived. Our feelings can be numbed and manipulated. Our perception shamed and confused. Our bodies tricked with medication. But our soul never forgets. And because we are one whole soul in one body, someday our body will present its bill. The wounded and lost child is only in hiding. The soul is still whole in spirit. Ultimately, our deepest self will accept no compromises or excuses, and it will not stop tormenting or contaminating us until we stop evading the truth. What I want to show you in this first program is how the child contaminates our life, that wounded, abused child. How that wounded, abused child torments us and contaminates our life. And what I want to do to start that is to look at a questionnaire. Well, I want to draw you a picture first because I don't have a mobile and I'm going to draw a lot of pictures. I'm going to be drawing pictures of adult children in this program, and this is the way I draw them. That there's a great big person here that has a little child inside of them. And we're going to be looking at infancy and toddler and preschool and school age. And I'm going to suggest with Bob Subby, he made a wonderful chart where he showed that in the beginning of life, your private self and your public self are pretty much the same. But as this child gets wounded, this public self gets big and the private self just stays in there, can't come out of hiding. And so you keep moving on with this tiny little child inside of you, and this child doesn't forget. This child remembers all the pain and will continue to act it out or act it in or continue to contaminate your life. So this is a kind of a visual idea of what we're going to do. Now I'm going to show you some questions, a test, like a questionnaire. Did your wounded child get wounded? We're going to look at some developmental stages. So here's infancy. Have you ever had or do you have an ingestive addiction? You're overeating, over-drinking. Or have you gotten in relationships with people who have that? I mean, I can take you in any public place and show you an eating disorder gets started. The child cries and we stick something in their mouth. So what's the message? When you're sad, eat it. When you're angry, eat it. Mistrust of people. The infancy is about trust. Can I trust the universe? Einstein on his deathbed said there's only one important question, and that is the universe friendly? That's a pretty good question. Fears of abandonment. What happens to you when a relationship ends? When a marriage ends? Of course there's grief about it, but do you become suicidal? Do you feel like you can't go on if this other person doesn't love you? Continual needs to be admired. We're going to talk about narcissistic disorder. Narcissus is the god that fell in love with himself looking in the water, his reflection in the water, and then he drowned. So we'll talk about a healthy narcissism. Toddler, do you have trouble knowing what you want? Trouble asking for what you want? Fear of trying new experiences. You hide in your hotel room when you go on the vacation. You're like a person who rides the bus backwards. You see life as it passes by. Fear of anger. You're manipulated by, you do anything to stop a person from being angry. Manipulated by anger. Afraid of saying no directly, so you say yes when you want to say no, and then you lie and manipulate to get out of it. Preschool. Trouble identifying what you're feeling. Thinking about feelings. Knowing what you're feeling. Difficulty expressing your feelings. No models. Nobody ever expressed feelings for you. So you don't know how. You found this out when you became an adult and got in a relationship. Because that's where this stuff manifests. You act on guesses and unchecked assumptions. Your husband asks you 5 years later why you've never cooked bluppity-blup. And you said, well, I saw you at a party 5 years ago. Pass that up. You think you're responsible for your parents' happiness. We'll talk a lot about that. If you're not a success, then they're not happy. You feel uncomfortable in social situations. We need to learn to cooperate in social skills in school. You're excessively competitive. You give in or have things your own way. That is, you either give in or you have to have it your own way. You won't try anything unless you know you can do it perfectly. Have intense fears of making a mistake. Now, I'm going to come back and I'm going to be giving questionnaires in several of the programs that are coming. But these are just little guidelines to help you see if you got your childhood developmental dependency needs met. Remember, a child has dependency needs, which means you can't get these needs met by yourself. You've got to depend on somebody to get them. So I had our people make up a banner here of the way that the child contaminates. These are some of the ways, not all of the ways, but some of the ways that the wounded child contaminates our life. And the first way is what we're calling codependency. And there's been a lot of maligning of codependency, but it's a very important idea. Because what it means is that we believe we can't generate happiness from inside. That you have to love me or I'm not okay. That I have to have money and prestige or I'm not okay. That everything is on the outside. In fact, one of the words I use for it is otheration. Otheration. I took that from a Spanish existentialist philosopher who said that human life is characterized by within oneselfness, whereas animal life is characterized by otheration. Living always on guard, hypervigilant, always, having to hunt your food and always being guarded lest you're never unguarded. Codependency is a disease of the developing self. In those developmental stages, you don't get your needs met, so your self doesn't develop. And when you're being abused, you can't stay in yourself. See, I knew what my parents felt before they knew what they felt. I knew what they needed before they knew what they needed. That's what happens. You can't pay attention to your own internal cues. Now, offender behavior. I want people to hope I can get it across to people that this work is not about hugging animals, although you will see people hugging animals, because we want to access the child ego state. We want to touch the feelings of the child. That some of the most terrible behavior that is done is because of the wounded inner child. I'm writing some men that are on death row right now. And one of the amazing things that came out of the family series was the number of criminals, of people that were in prison, who wrote me and saw that series and began to realize that they had been acting out in their offender behavior what had happened to them as children. That they had been doing to society what was done to them. That the original soul murder had gone without any kind of consequences. So offender behavior, and then another way to understand offender behavior is that we do to our children what was done to us, or exactly the opposite. I went exactly the opposite. I didn't have a dad. I never had a dad there for me, so I became the dad that I never had. See, my little boy, so here's John, here's grown-up John, and he has children over here. And instead of the grown-up John parenting them, the little boy in me parents them. That is, I become a parent to them like I wished I'd had a daddy. And 180 degrees from wrong is still wrong. And my erring and my parenting was more about not putting enough structure, because I had been overstructured, or in some ways I'd been abandoned and then I'd been overstructured, so I'm going to compensate for that. And so it's enormously important that one of the worst places that the wounded inner child comes out is with your own children. that as you go through these developmental stages, as you go through each stage, depending on whether you got your needs met or not, is what's going to determine what's going to happen between you and that child. So parenting, that's an enormously important aspect. I'm going to talk some more about offender. The worst kinds of offender is when we beat children or incest children. And we know that in large numbers of cases, the people who beat their children or incest their children were beaten and incested. We know that the child in them is acting out exactly what was done to them. So that we will reenact scenes. In subsequent programs, I'm going to talk about how to redo these early scenes, but that these scenes get imprinted in the brain. And then we act them out, either as a victim or as an offender. Like I would have hated the thought of being an offender 15 years ago, but I did offender things to my children. I screamed at my children, little bitty people with little, developing central nervous systems. Very beautiful, delicate human beings. Now, when you're going to hear a lot of stuff that you probably did to your own children. And believe me, my belief is you don't have a choice until you heal this wounded inner child. That you will act out or as a victim or act out as an offender, or you'll act it in. And I'll talk about that in just a second. Another way that this child contaminates our life is with narcissistic disorders. Every baby needs a face that loves it unconditionally. The primal scene of our life. In later programs, I'll talk about the importance of having our support group, and that the healing of toxic shame is re-identifying with a face, is reconnecting with a face. And why it's important to be in groups, because there are faces there. That face needed to love you unconditionally. The only way you could know that every part of you was okay was by looking in that face and having that mirrored back. If you looked in that face and a part of you wasn't there, then that part of you split off. Like your anger split off, or your sadness split off, or your parts of your body may have split off. And they're not whole. I'm going to be talking about the spiritual wound, that you weren't loved for the very one you are. The very one you are. David Mura, again, here's a wonderful quote where he talks about, he's talking about a boy who's been incested by his uncle here. The cry of the boy says, I want to be loved, to be known and cared for, to have my whole being acknowledged. In committing this act on me, you are telling me that I am nothing. I am an object. I am a tool. And I'm not even allowed to express my feelings about it. Once that cry is suppressed, and given the circumstance that it must be, the boy then may take that abuse as an act of love. And I'm going to tell you that as we look at the dynamics of the wounded inner child and think that people recycle this through their whole lives and keep picking people who abuse them, what that really means to me is that the child in there has come to believe that love is abuse. And that is one of the scariest things that I know about. Now, narcissistic disorder means that if you weren't loved for the very one you are, there's a hole inside of you. I call it a hole in your soul, because I think there's something that cries out. Somebody might call it the witnessing self or the higher self. It's okay with me. I call it the soul. There's some part of us that when we're being abused cries out. We can't name it. We don't even have a name for it. We don't even know we have a right to, but we cry out. So when the child doesn't get the admiration, the unconditional positive regard that they need, that there's a hole in there, then how are you going to get that? You may go through your life trying to get people to admire you. Or, here's the worst thing, you get this child to admire you. You have a child, and you set it up so that they can never leave you, that they will always love you, that they will always express gratitude to you no matter what. Is that familiar to anybody? And that's what Alice Miller wrote about in the drama The Gifted Child. And you think it's great, I have this devoted mom. Be careful. I hope you do have a devoted mom, but be careful. You can have a mom that looks devoted or a dad that looks devoted who isn't really there for you, but is there for their own admiration, their own narcissistic supplies. Now, another part is trust issues. This child, I haven't trusted anybody in my life. I look like a good guy people pleaser because I know how to do that act. And that was the act that I got into very early on. But a part of me doesn't trust anybody. A part of me, that wounded inner child, needs to control. You know, when I sobered up with my alcoholism, I found out 10 years later I was still controlling every situation I was in. I wasn't expressing feelings. I didn't know what my feelings were. Or I was either controlling everybody or I was gullible. I was investing in gold mines in Nevada and seashore in Kansas because I liked the guy. I liked the guy. See, this is very dangerous stuff. And I'm telling you, the pain that my gullibility, my wounded inner child has cost me a lot of money. One of my buddies was telling me about this water he gets. And it's supposed to take everything away. You couldn't possibly get arthritis, or you couldn't get this if you drink this water. And I had this fantasy of this guy sitting on his couch, laughing, going, "Hey, Myrna, fill the bottle up with some more water. I just had $400 more order." You know, like, how do we know? But this is something about that's going to fix me. That's going to fix me. And so we get real gullible. The child doesn't know who to trust, or the child doesn't know what to trust. The material you're watching may affect the lives of your family and friends. If you find this kind of programming important, please take a moment to listen to what your local public television station has to say. Thank you. Hi, I'm John Bradshaw, and I hope you're enjoying my series on homecoming. Adult children need to reclaim their wounded inner child by going back and experiencing feelings that were too overwhelming for them to feel at the time. This requires re-experiencing your various developmental stages as an infant, toddler, preschooler, school-aged, and beyond. Finishing unfinished business can be extremely painful and time-consuming, and the rewards are immeasurable. Speaking of unfinished business, have you phoned in a pledge of support to this public television station? I urge you to call now and become part of their family of contributors. You'll be glad you did. Thanks.
That's right, and speaking of
if I had a mother that engulfed me, I will look for women that have the same positive and negative qualities in the hope that this time I can have a relationship without getting engulfed. If you had a daddy that never showed you emotion, or you didn't have a daddy, then you may keep looking. That little boy, little girl, keeps looking for daddy. That daddy may be a person, daddy may be a church, daddy may be a political party, daddy may be a company that you give your life to, maybe a guru that you give your life to. Very dangerous to have that little child making the choices. So you act out, and it's actually a holistic thing. The child's trying to complete. See, the child's unfinished. This little child is needy. This little child is needy. This little child is incomplete. I quit drinking December the 11th, 1965. And 10 years later, I was still compulsive. I was still insatiable in some ways. I was still acting out compulsively, addicted to excitement and adrenaline rush, because I hadn't cured this wounded inner child. I hadn't healed my wounded inner child. Now, you can also act the child's pain in. You can do to yourself what was done to you as a child. You can do to yourself. I've had clients who hit themselves in the face, bang their head on the car when they made a mistake, cut their wrists, acted all the rage and disdain of their parents in. That acting in could come out in sadomasochistic fantasies. Let's say this child was bonded to a mother. Let's say a boy child is bonded to a mother who has unresolved incest issues. So she's got sexualized rage. He's going to carry that sexualized rage about his masculinity. And so he may have fantasies of being demeaned by women, of being masochistic to women. See, that's not nature. That's learned behavior. That comes from being violated. So it's enormously important that we understand that you can act it out or you can act it in. Now, magical. This little kid's magical. This is a kid. This is Winnie the Pooh and Tigger too. This kid's magical. And I think about all of us getting rocked to sleep with fairy tales. Fairy tales are wonderful. They're wonderful. But you need to grow up and understand that they're a right brain phenomena. They're about symbol. They're not to be taken literally. Suppose you have a wounded child. You may take that magic literally. And for example, Cinderella, whose mother had to be an alcoholic because she talked to herself in the mirror. No, that's Snow White. Snow White. And then she lives with these 7 asexual dwarfs. And then she sets herself up with the hope that a necrophile will stumble through the woods at the right time. A guy that likes to kiss dead women. And Cinderella goes to the party, doesn't even get the guy's phone number. And waits in the kitchen for some banana with the right shoe for the next 40 years. I mean, this is scary stuff. Waiting. Are you waiting for your ship to come in? I had a buddy tell me, well, my ship pulled in, there was nothing on it. So be careful about waiting, trying. Here's another piece of magic. Trying. Well, I'll try. Try to get up out of your chairs. Try to get up. You don't try. You either get up or you don't get up. But you don't try. And all of us who do counseling, you know, I used to have a little bell and I'd ring it when people would say try. Because we know they're not going to do it. Trying is dying, we say in recovery. Trying is dying. It's magic. And then magic is Jack and the Beanstalk finds these beans or these pills that you can eat. Like Tuinol and Thecanol and Nembutol and all these wonderful red and yellow and Christmas trees. And boy, when I found those little babies and ate some of those, whoom, the whole world, magic. See, addiction, ingestive addictions are about magic. The sadness goes away when you eat the food. You fill your stomach, you have a tight gut so you don't feel the anger anymore. Suddenly your mood altered. Self-sex, your mood altered. You don't have the pain anymore. What a analgesic. Magical. That wounded inner child keeps that magic going. It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous to live our life according to magic. If I could just get married. There's one. If I can just get married. And little girls are told that the right man will come along. Now you wait for the right man, darling. The right man will come along. And those movies that I grew up with where you're supposed to know, you know, like androgyny, that we were all bisexual and we were split in half. And when you see your other half, you'll know. I grew up with those movies, you know, where someone looked across, you know, boom, here they come, you know, across the room toward each other. And I would go to parties and I would go, oh, I think that's her, you know. And then I'd go, no, wait a minute. I think that's her. No, wait a minute. I think this. And I'm about 19 before I'd leave. So not a good idea. Now, probably the worst place that the wounded child is wounded is in relationships. The place that codependency, toxic shame, adult child issues are when you get in a relationship. See, this wounded developing self, you don't know you've got this problem until you get in a relationship as an adult. That's where it manifests. And so that's how we came to understand this, the adult children of alcoholics. We began to understand that just growing up in an alcoholic family had damaged you, whether daddy got well or not. And that it was going to manifest in your adult relationships. See, because what's going to happen? So here's Johnny, and he goes to the party, and here's Guinevere over here, and she's at the party, and he looks over, and you have one of these, it's hyperventilation. And it's called a vibration. It's an energy vibration, and there's something real about it. That we just spot that person, and you make that eye contact, and there may be a little kind of hyperventilation, but it's like, wow. And we think it's sexual or something. Often what it is, this little boy is seeing the exact pattern that he grew up with. Like Terry Garsky in some of his lectures talks about dating 4 suicidal women in the same year. Now, that's not easy to do, folks, to go into a crowd and look and let's see, who is suicidal here? Now, I mean, I don't want to make fun of this because it's a terrible, painful reality we're talking about, but how do we know? How can we find somebody right at our level of dysfunction? See, like if I was in Russia and I didn't know how to speak Russian, I saw an American tourist, what would you, wow, let's get over here and let's talk. Here's somebody that knows my language. And that's exactly what happens with dysfunction. That's exactly what happens. We pick somebody that knows how to talk our language. We pick somebody that meets us at our map of woundedness, if you will. That is very frightening. Now, when you're courting, it's this little boy and little girl. It's it's wonderful. That's why we're beginning to understand we've got so much love addiction. Because you're just out of your gourd when you're doing this. I mean, this is wonderful. It's the most wonderful feeling in the world to be in love. You go back to primal bonding. You go back to gazing. You go back to that face, that primal scene with the face. And people who this fits their morals, the sex when you're in love is oceanic. It's like going back into the Big Bang, the beginning of time. So, wow. Now, that's courting. That's in love, and you're courting. Then you get married. What's going to happen? He's going to say, you're supposed to be my mother. And she's going to say, you're supposed to be my dad. And so how are these two kids, this 180-pound 3-year-old, this 120-pound 3-year-old, did you see the movie Big? What a great movie of a child living in an adult body. I know exactly what that feels like. I know exactly what that feels like. I talked to some financial people. You all have been buying so many books. I have to go talk to financial people now. And I don't know duck about finances. And I'm sitting there, and these guys are talking about this. You've got to leverage this and get you a charitable... And I am absolutely do not understand one word that they're saying. I'm pretending like I do. I'm taking notes. It's like, but this little kid's going, when do we get out of here? And it's like, that's what it feels like. So when these two people try to get married and have a life, what you're going to hear is you never and can't you ever and you always and I'm here for you and you're never here for me. And they're both insatiable. We don't have relationships. We take hostages. That's a saying we have in recovery. It's why I used to say, show me a happy person. I'll show you somebody who isn't in a relationship. Because it is so troublesome. It is so troublesome. Now, obviously, we want to be in relationships. We can't live without love and caring and to have somebody that you matter to. So wonderful to have somebody that you matter to. But boy, these two are going to have a tough time. And these two kids are non-disciplined. That's the N in our little chart. They're non-disciplined. What does that mean? It may mean that he's obsessive compulsive. And he has to have everything in its place. And this house needs to be perfect. He absolutely demands that every speck of dust be cleaned off of this house. And she's kinesthetic. She kind of drops her pants wherever she is. She likes a house that's lived in. She thinks that a floor is for clothes. See, I'm wondering why so many people are attracted to Roseanne. It's like, wow. Because I think there's this whole thing. Anyway, or she may be very impulsive. See, discipline goes one way or the other. A healthy discipline is a balance. And all throughout subsequent programs, I'm going to be talking about balance. The importance of balance in our life. Aristotle wrote about this in the Nicomachean Ethics 400 years before Christ, or whenever Aristotle lived. But he wrote about balance, the golden mean. Not all or nothing, but balance. How important balance is in life. That nobody's gooder than they're badder. That people are both and that somehow in a relationship we've got to accept that there's going to be boredom, and that the person will pick their nose on occasion when we're not looking, when they didn't think we were looking. I didn't think women went to the bathroom for a long time. That was an amazing thing to figure out. It was very depressing too. But anyway, so it was like we've got to accept each other the way we are. Now, probably the thing that I've talked about the most in the family series is addictive behavior. And my belief is that addiction, of course, ingestive addictions, can have a genetic predisposition. I am a genetic alcoholic. There's no question about that. That when I put alcohol in this body, something happened to me. I believe that some obesity has genetic factors in it, and that there are genetics, but I want to make it perfectly clear. In 25 years, I have never seen a purely genetic addict. I ran the Palmer Drug Abuse Program in Los Angeles for 4 years. I was involved with it for 15. I've been involved in recovery for 25. I believe that there is a training for addiction, and that all genetics tell you is what kind of addiction you might have if you get the training for addiction. And the training for addiction is abuse. That's what the training for addiction is. When I'm a little boy and I'm standing there and someone can slap me across the face and I cannot speak. Now, I am a human being with absolute dignity. We have fought and died for democracy, for the social equality of every single human being. What happens to that child? That child is standing there looking up at somebody that's 5 times his size, 5 times his weight. That would be a 17-foot, 9-inch tall, 800-pound giant. What would it feel like to be slapped in the face or pinched or jerked or be yelled at or to be told to go to your room and stop that crying, I'll give you something to cry about? And what are you sad about? There's nothing to be sad about. What are you learning? You are learning about power, control, secrecy, and especially if it's something sexual that happened to you, or you're in a family that has very rigid boundaries where nobody can talk about what happened. Nobody talks about the dirty linen in this family. In fact, we look the other way. We're so loyal we don't even notice. We stop noticing that the emperor has no clothes or that daddy sleeps on the porch frequently, and we're told he has a bad back. That's why he sleeps there at 2 in the morning. And we believe that because this is all you know. What you grow up with, you think is normal. So this child is being taught secrecy, fear, can't express emotion, so the numbing of emotions. This child is being taught power and control and distance. That these are the basis for a relationship. This is how you honor your parents. So what is that a setup for? Addiction. Think about what an addiction is. When that alcohol hit my stomach, I had power. The acne went away. I wasn't afraid of girls anymore. I could express my emotions. It wasn't, and I had a relationship. I had a relationship with alcohol. I had a relationship with drugs. And any addict will tell you that we had relationships. Now, People say, well, that's not me. I wasn't an alcoholic, and I don't have an eating disorder, although 50% of the population does. But what about mood altering through activity? You work all the time. You're going to see a videotape segment later on in this series of a gal that is sobbing as she does her exercise, talking about the fact that her daddy, the only way she knew her daddy lived there was he left treats on the counter every morning in this workaholic family where she never saw her father. He had no time for her. See, children know that what you give time to is what you love. You have no time for me. See, so a mood alteration through activity, that could be sexual rituals, that could be buying addictions, that could be food, that could be acting out with gambling, or you could mood alter your feelings, like you could rage to cover up your fear, like I did, or you could worry all the time, get addicted to worry. You could get addicted to joy, so you drive everybody crazy. You're always smiling. When you talk about death and things like that, you're grinning and people want to knock you in the nose. So it's very, very dangerous, these addictions. And I think we're taught these addictions. And I think if we want to deal with 131 million addicts, we're going to have to get off of this. Let's get the cocaine pushers, and we don't need to get off of it, but let's do some other stuff. And let's understand that this stuff is fostered in families through abuse, and that the rules that we've been using that we call normal rules are abusive rules. Now, thought disorders. These children, all children, absolutize, all or nothing. You give me ice cream, you take me to Astroworld. I remember going to Astroworld with my kids, buying balloons and bears and going, and 4 hours where you're looking at your watch, praying that this thing will be over with. And finally it's over. They're going to close the amusement park. And you're walking out with balloons on each arm and teddy bears, and they say, let's go to Baskin Robbins. And you say, no, I can't take another thing. And they say, I hate you. It's all or nothing, all or nothing. Now I'm going to show you how that manifests in adult behavior. America, right or wrong? That's all or nothing. Thought disorders. People sitting on a plane behind me, and the woman's looking at a vacation guide, and it says Australia, and she says to her husband, "Oh, look at this, honey. Wouldn't that be fabulous?" He says, "What are you showing me that for? What's the matter with you? I've worked my ass off. You keep throwing this up." But she never said anything to the guy. She just showed him these pictures of Australia. He heard it as a direct attack that he was inadequate. Shame-based people do this a lot. That you hear everything is inadequate. Awfulizing. You don't get on the airplane and say, "This is the safest I've been all day." You see the wing on fire. You exaggerate things out of all proportion. So thought disorders are a common part. They're a common part of the wounded inner child. Felt thought. I remember going through this guide. I was going to buy the right car, the car that had the best performance record. And I spent 3 weeks looking for this, and I'm driving along. I looked in when I saw this convertible, and in 30 minutes I bought the convertible. That was little John. That was my wounded inner child. Now the last part of this little chart on contaminant is emptiness. And I call that the spiritual bankruptcy. That the child has been wounded, the child has been toxically shamed, the child is an object of contempt to himself or herself, so that there's this emptiness inside. That's what we keep trying to fill up with our addictions. I thirst. Go to a bar and listen. Listen to that poor little child in there. And you can't get enough alcohol, and you can't get enough sex, and you can't buy enough clothes to cover up, and you can't get enough money, and you can't get enough love. And you drive people crazy. You drive people crazy because the more they love you, how much do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love? See, it's that wounded little child. And so we've really got to be willing to understand that until I heal that child, I'm going to be insatiable. That this is the root of compulsivity. And that I put the cork on the bottle December the 11th, 1965, but I hadn't healed my compulsivity because I hadn't healed this wounded inner child. I had just behavior modified alcohol. I had just changed. And this, I don't want to let people off the hook who don't happen to be alcoholics. Take a look at your own life. And what do you do to mood alter with? You can watch television to mood alter. You can eat to mood alter. You can starve to mood alter. When I was in the monastery, I used to fast all the time, and man, do I know about the endorphins that come from fasting. So I understand anorexia and what the mood alteration is of that, and the mood alteration of bulimia, vomiting out the shame. So we've got to understand that there's a wide range of behaviors that we have been trained to have, and that these behaviors are about our spiritual emptiness. Toxic shame is spiritual bankruptcy. Codependency is spiritual bankruptcy. Why? Because spirituality is about an inner life. It's about a lifestyle, that I am choosing my own life, that I am in charge of my own life, that I'm expanding my life and I'm making my own decisions. Remember, Joseph Campbell talked about finding your bliss, doing what you want with your very own life. Doing what you want with your very own life. Not for codependent, wounded child, adult children. So it's enormously important that we go on this journey. And I want to read you a poem of a person in one of my workshops. I get wonderful poems. I'm going to read you another wonderful poem later on in this series about the abuse that comes from playing baseball. A little 5-year-old boy with his dad. But this is from Lynn Davis. And she says, I received your letter of 7/29. I appreciate your response, and you are welcome to use my poem, Lost Child, in any of your presentations. You shared yourself with humor and compassion and showed me so many possibilities. Lost Child was the first step toward turning a childhood of violence and abuse into hope and promise. Now, what she writes in this poem is what I see us doing in this series, in the programs that are going to come. I'm going to be talking about healing this child and finding wholeness and having this child in our life as part of our life, that our adult will be there and our child will be there. She writes, in the darkest of times, I stand at the edge of that cold blue blanket and wonder if it has taken your breath away. And I cannot hear you in the whispers that had followed me since we were lost to each other. But then it's fall, when our time's colors were most brilliant. And I promise that if I see you again, I will cradle you and stroke your soft, round face and wrap us together in red gold and spin ribbons around us and sail us from that splintered song to a place where we are precious, where we breakfast every morning on sweetness and light. And the sounds of the night are sleep lullaby, where everything we see and hear and touch and smell and taste is part of that wonderful adventure we promised to take together. When we were together, we promised that. And we will bathe in the warm, sad silence that was between us for so long, and we will feel everything. And everything we feel will weave soft, magic fabric around us and keep us safe and warm. And we will be a child together. Now that just moves me so deeply. And it's the journey of finding the child, that I can have this child in my life, that I can be the adult I am, but I can know that I have a little boy, a precious little boy, that lives with me, who is full of love and spontaneity and tenderness and believes in life and trusts life and is not afraid of life and loves to explore and adventure if he's just safe, if he knows he's safe. So in the weeks to come, the programs that we're going to do in this series, I'm going to be talking about original pain, the kind of work we do in our treatment center. I'm going to show you some very powerful segments of that work, and how people, when they can express those feelings, when they can get into a safe place, you're going to see a person work on their anger and a person work on their sadness from their sexual abuse, and a man work on his desertion by his father. See, all of these things are soul murdering. We're going to talk about ways to access the child, exercises that I do in my workshops, where we reclaim the infant child. where we write with the non-dominant hand letters to our parents and get in touch with the feelings we had about not getting our needs met as children. In one of the programs, I'm going to have people writing a fairy tale about their childhood, once upon a time. And I'll share some of my fairy tale. And when people read that fairy tale to each other, it accesses the feelings of that child. You see, the child was there, especially in the first 7 years, as magical and non-logical, and lived more in a world of felt thought, like a hypnotic trance. And so it's very important that we know how to access the child. And then the whole goal of this work in this series is to get us to empowerment, to get us to the place where we can have our power and include that resilient, spontaneous, courageous little person in our life that I'm going to call the wonder child. And I want to read you a quotation. This is from Robert Fulghum, the best-selling author. He says, "I know what I really want for Christmas. I want my childhood back. Nobody is going to give me that. I know it doesn't make sense. But since when is Christmas about sense anyway? It's about a child of long ago and far away, and it is about the child of now in you and me, waiting behind the door of our hearts for something wonderful to happen." Now, I hope in the programs that come that you will experience the incredible wonder that you can have by reclaiming and championing your own wounded inner child that's been waiting for you for a long, long time.
This is PBS.
This episode, we'll see how the natural child is soul murdered as it tries to adapt to an abusive environment. We'll explore the brain's function in numbing out this early emotional pain and embark on an uncovery process as we reconnect with original repressed feelings.
Bradshaw on Homecoming is made possible by viewers like you and by Transamerica Fund Management, the mutual fund company that's been helping investors reach their financial goals for over 40 years. Additional funding is provided by the following organizations and individuals.
Hello, everybody. What I want to talk about is original pain. This is a word, I don't know where it originated, but I've been using it. I talk about original pain, original justice, as the healing work that needs to be done for the wounded inner child. And what I want to do in this program is talk to you about how the child got wounded. And I believe, this is my belief, people interview me and they say, you said 96% of families are dysfunctional. And I say, no, I didn't say that. Virginia Sears said that. I say all families are dysfunctional to some degree. And then the logicians say, wait a minute, well, if all are dysfunctional, then there's no exceptions. And I studied pharmalogic for a number of years, and I don't care about logic. I believe that it's possible for all the birds to be flying in the wrong direction. That's possible, at least. And Snell and Gail Putney wrote a beautiful book years ago called The Adjusted American: Normal Neuroses in American Society. That the rules that we have been using, which worked 150, 200 years ago, they worked when society was dominator, when it was male-dominated, when people were into survival, when the beating of women and children was commonplace. The rule of thumb was how big your rod could be to beat your children with, to beat your wife with. We forget how primitive human life has been in some ways. Lloyd Demuth is writing these histories of childhood now, accurate histories of childhood. And what we're understanding is that childhood was a nightmare, that incest was commonplace, that children were considered to be little animals up till about age 7. That was the age of reason. So you whip them and beat them and spank them, and that's the way you get little animals to be trained properly. I remember hearing a woman say she had broken her son's spirit by the time he was 3 years old. This guy was this apathetic, passive-aggressive, alcoholic, who had had all the life beaten out of him, literally. So we're really beginning to understand that these rules reached their apex at Nuremberg. The inherent potential of a set of rules that said one person has power over other people, one person's the master, the rest are the slave, deny and repress emotions, sexually shame people. These are what these rules were that we've inherited. They reached their apex at Nuremberg. Obedience without content. Those Nazi murderers stood up and blushed when they missed the instruction to stand up, but they didn't blush when they read these lists of all the people they had killed. So obedience without content. So I believe that everybody's carrying what I call the spiritual wound. And the spiritual wound is that everybody needs to be loved for the very one they are. You need to be loved for the very one you are. There's nobody like you. There never has been anyone like you. There never will be anyone like you again. So we need to be loved for the very one we are. When we're not loved for our I am who I am, we're spiritually wounded. When Moses went to the bush, he said, "What's your name?" In the theophany of the burning bush, God said, "I am who I am." Every human being needs to be I am who I am. The second I tell you, what are you laughing about? There's nothing to laugh about. What are you crying about? There's nothing to cry about. Don't you ever raise your voice to me again. Don't you ever quit being such a ninny. I remember going downstairs one night and saying I was lonely, and they said, "You're not." "No, you're not." I went back up to my room, scratching my little head, going, "God, I must be weird. I could have sworn I was lonely." See, so it's incredible when we begin to look at the levels of abuse that we've come out of in normal families. And my premise is that normal parenting, as we've known it, that represses emotion, the no-talk rule, the no-feel rule, is abusive and shaming. Now, if we move out of that, if we move out of normal parenting into sexual abuse or physical abuse, and a lot of kids are abused physically and a lot of kids are abused sexually. In fact, we're beginning to understand what I talked about in the family series is how much sexual abuse there is. And sexual abuse is far more widespread than we thought of it. For example, I want to read you some of the issues around sexual abuse. Any bodily sexual activity with a child, touching in a sexual way. So that includes kissing. Some of you may have come out, remember being kissed and feeling icky, being held or hugged, and it felt icky to you. Sexual hugging, kissing, fondling. Of course, any kind of physical penetration is sexual abuse, although many people probably the majority of people who've been sexually abused never were involved in physical penetration. Covert forms of sexual abuse are when a parent is being turned on in some way, or a parent has unresolved sexual issues. Like, let's say a child bonds to a parent. So here's your dad, and here you are as a little girl, and you're bonded to him, and he has unresolved incest issues, or he has unresolved sexual issues. So he's carrying a lot of sexualized rage, which means he has a lot of anger about women. And you're his little princess, or you're his caretaker in the place of mom. You carry his sexualized rage. So you may have fantasies of being contempted. You may have sadomasochistic fantasies. You may have all kinds of fantasies about depreciating women, that your sex is no good. There are forms of incest that have to do with voyeurism, being looked at in ways that make you feel uncomfortable. There are no boundaries in your family. You can't lock the door in the bathroom. Exhibitionism, there's a nudity going on that embarrasses you. See, the cue is children. Parents need to look at children and let them take their cues from their children. The children need to let us know, and they will. They'll blush. They'll be embarrassed. Children need privacy. Now, in the program on the preschooler, Reclaiming Your Preschooler, I'm going to talk about non-physical incest. When in a family system there's dysfunction in the marriage, and let's say the boy child is bonded with his mother, and mother's an untreated incest victim, then he becomes his mother's surrogate, and he carries her untreated incest. She may not even be fully aware of the sexuality that's going on. Or one of the rules of thumb is whenever one of these kids is more important, let's say this daughter is more important to this husband than his wife, this husband is more important to his wife, or this son is more important to this wife than her husband, you have non-physical incest. So it's very, very important that we understand that there is a wide range of sexual abuse. There's also physical abuse. Slapping. In the family series, I talked about an open hand on a closed bottom. I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe it is ever useful to hit a child. And then to hit them with hairbrushes and belts and fly swatters and make them go get their own weapons of torture and to threaten them. I was driving along with a head of a psychology department at a university, and he started trembling. He looked across the street and he saw a police car. I said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "My mother used to take me down to the police station and tell me that's where she was going to put me." I've had workshops where I asked people, how many of you were burned to show you the fires of hell, what the fires of hell feel like? Incredible number of hands go up. So the level of abuse is just, it's absolutely uncanny when we think about it. Now, the family system, enmeshment, like when this marriage is dysfunctional, where there's an intimacy vacuum. See, nature abhors a vacuum. The children will try to fill in the vacuum. So in a family system, let's say Jack and Jill get married pregnant and they have Susie. Susie may be a lost child. That is, she's the child that the way she can matter in that family is by getting lost. Or this child may be the hero child. Or this child may be the scapegoat child. All of these are forms of enmeshment, family system enmeshment, meaning that as the children fill in for this dysfunctional marriage, or those of you who saw the family series, I had the big mobile, this beautiful mobile that Trudy Sween created, and I'd go over and touch the mobile and show you how if one part of the system is affected, all the parts of the system get affected. So when we begin to look at the family, enmeshment is one of the ways that you were spiritually wounded. Because like I was a star in my family. I was the president of every class. But this is the way that I had to give up my reality. And in a later program on championing, I'm going to talk about what to do about these rigid family enmeshment roles where you lost your true self. And it's very important that we learn that that our inner child may be hidden under these kinds of enmeshments. And that we need to decide what parts of these roles we want to keep playing, because I went to be a priest. That was another way to be a star. I was a therapist for a number of years. There was another way to be a star. And caretaker was another role that I had. So it's very, very important that we understand physical abuse, sexual abuse, family enmeshment, all as forms of spiritual wounding. And then in the program on infancy, in the program on toddler, in the program on preschooler, I'm going to talk about neglect of your developmental dependency needs. And I'm going to spend some time on every one of those programs to show how when you don't get your developmental dependency needs met, you grow up to be an adult child. You grow up to be a child who didn't get his developmental needs met. And when I don't have my developmental needs, all the kinds of things that I've talked about as to how the child contaminates your life are going to be there. A lot of that questionnaire that I've given in a previous program and will give you in other programs are about not getting your needs met as you grow up, like you didn't get your infancy needs met. So you have a lot of touch needs, or you have a lot of trust needs. You didn't get your toddler needs met, so you can't say no. You're manipulated by anger. You don't know how to resolve conflict. You have a fight, you don't talk for 2 years because you have no conflict resolution skills. That's all about developmental dependency needs. Now, emotional abuse, it's all emotional abuse. It's all emotional abuse. If you're being incested, you're being emotionally abused. If you're being physically abused, you're being emotionally abused. And remember, in a previous program, I talked about that was the way, that abuse is the training for addiction. Because when you're being abused, you're being taught power, control, shame, secrecy, fear, distrust, distance, and the numbing of emotions. Those are the basis of relationships. That's what you're being trained to believe. And you begin to confuse that with love. Now, it's very important that we understand that emotions are primary. The primacy of emotion. That our emotions, the emotional brain develops before the thinking brain. That in the limbic system is there. We have 131 million addicts in the United States. Those are all emotional diseases. See, we wonder, why do we have so much addiction? Because we programmatically and systematically repress emotion. And I'm telling you, you can grow up and be in your head and not even know how bad you feel. You can grow up and be in your head. I survived getting in my head. Now, emotion is primary. It moves us. It's energy. Our anger moves us to fight. Our fear moves us to flight. Our sadness moves us to tears. According to Montague at Princeton, we are the only animals who weep. Other animals cry, but they do not weep. They do not shed tears. That tears discharge energy. And when we see later in this program the original pain work, the segments that I've got of people doing original pain work, what you're going to see people discharging energy because this energy has been blocked. You're going to see a woman working on her anger that was blocked at 5 years old, and that she's still a 5-year-old when she gets around her mom, because she's never been allowed to express her anger. She's never been allowed to express her sadness. A lot of men have repressed, frozen grief. A lot of us can't celebrate because all of our emotions have been... See, if your fear and your anger and your sadness are all repressed, it's going to be hard to get to your joy. I can remember standing in Las Vegas, hitting sevens on the slot machine, standing there, while everybody around me was jumping up and down, but I'm like frozen. It's like I can't get into it because this energy in my body is not there. It's all frozen. Now, of course, when I drank, when I ate pills, whoa, could I let that energy out? See, it's why Carl Menninger said that alcoholism is like a man on fire running into the sea to put out the fire, but drowning. It's a disease of a disease. That the root of the disease is not healthy shame, which is our limits when children blush or are embarrassed. That is, they're caught with their pants down. They're caught exposed. This is a natural human emotion. Problem in English is we only have a one word for shame. French has two, German has two, Latin has two, Greek has two. Homer used the word as awe in the face of the gods. The highest virtue for a medieval knight of the Round Table in the Percival myth was shame, meaning modesty and humility. Healthy shame is an enormously important emotion. It is the root of conscience and morality. So without a healthy sense of shame, you don't have any conscience or morality. Now, most of us get all of these emotions shamed. And when you grow up in a family and you've got adult children for parents, you can't possibly get your developmental dependency needs met, because those needs are there. Those needs are there, and you can't get them met because your parents have never gotten their needs met. So if your mom was not allowed to have her sadness, she's not going to let you have your sadness. Like when you see some of the work that we're going to show you, it's very important that the people in the groups, when they're working, be there for each other, not try to take each other out of the emotion. But you watch yourself wanting to take the person out of their emotion. Now, this is the model that McLean uses as Chicago, the tripartite brain, that there's a visceral brain, an emotional brain, a thinking brain, and they develop just like that. So that this brain, this emotional brain, develops before the thinking brain, meaning that thinking comes out of feeling and not the other way around. That's why toxic shame, in my belief system and in my treatment work, cannot be cured with rational emotive techniques. You can't stay up in your head and cure stuff that's down here. So original pain work means getting the emotion out, doing the grief work, doing the anger work, allowing yourself to tremble with fear, allowing yourself to have the motion of the energy. And so we'll look at that in just a little bit more in just a second, but this is the idea. Now, when we are abused, when we're toxically shamed, like when you're physically spanked and exposed, you're publicly humiliated, it's like it forms a little cell, a little imprint. And that little imprint is like, as a matter of fact, the earlier it happens, the younger you are, the more helpless you are. And there was just a study that came out in the New York Times about one catastrophic event can change brain chemistry. The more helpless you are, it's like it imprints the brain. Children internalize their parents at their worst. They internalize their parents at their worst when it's the most scary, when it's the most shaming. So that imprint, and then let's say there's something else that happens, you're screamed at, and there's something else that happens, and these are like little black cells, they're like holes, they're like black holes is what I meant, they're like black holes in space, and they have an energy, and they begin to interconnect, and they form scenes, what Sylvan Tompkins calls governing scenes. And in a later program, when we talk about championing the child, we're going to talk about going back and redoing these scenes. Because these are the scenes that get acted out. These are the scenes when I talked about the adult child. I talked about this little kid reenacting. He keeps trying to find a daddy. He keeps trying to find a mother like he never had. He keeps reenacting those scenes because that trauma, the trauma in his life is imprinted there in his brain. And until he grieves it, until he cries, until he beats the bataka stick, until he expresses the anger, it's all imprinted in there. And remember, if emotion is energy, where does the energy go? It goes into our body, into our muscles. Our bodies carry the pain. I remember Alice Miller, your body will present its bill. You can be in your head and not even know that all this sadness and this rage is going on inside of the emotional brain because you got in your head and you survived in your head. Like a lot of people who define themselves as codependent adult children buy a lot of books. Why? Because we're going to read ourselves into recovery, right? So there's a door that says heaven, there's a door that says lecture on heaven, and we're all lined up for the lecture. Because we're going to try to figure this out before we go there. We wouldn't just want to go there. And when you grow up in a family where there's a lot of craziness going on, Boy, there's nothing to figure out. It's just crazy. But the child's always trying to figure it out. Jane Middleton Moss describes a little girl comes in at 3 o'clock and from school, Mama, can I have a peanut butter sandwich? Get out of here, you little brat. The child goes out, comes back an hour later, Mama's had 3 drinks. Mama gives her an icky kiss. The child's going, whoa, what did I do the second time that I didn't do the first time? At 6 o'clock, Mama's had a bunch of drinks. She's kissing her and telling her she's going to buy her a 10-speed bike. The kid's going, whoa, I've got to figure this out. How did I walk in the third time? You know, I'm going to try to figure this out. By midnight, Mama's passed out. The next morning, the little girl goes in to get her 10-speed bike, and Mama says, get out of here, you little brat. She's got 5 mothers. It gets real crazy. It's like getting in a movie in the middle and you don't know the plot. You don't know what's going on. So it's very, very scary. So this person with all these imprinted scenes, if they're unresolved, there's no way this shame-based dad or this shame-based mom isn't going to act this out and isn't going to act it out on the children, and the children are going to be toxically shamed. That's the word I use. Since we don't have a word in English, I talk about healthy shame, which is knowing your limits, which is the permission to be human, which is I need help, which is I can make a mistake. In one of the programs, I'm going to talk about new rules. And one of the new rules, it's okay to make a mistake. Or any of you are in 12-step programs, when we're wrong, promptly admit it. It's okay to make a mistake. We don't have to be perfect. We're going to get some new rules. We need some new rules. And we're going to have to work out these scenes, and the way you work out these scenes is by grieving them, by getting the energy out of your body. If you don't work it out, you act it out, or you act it in. That is, I do to myself what was done to me. My book hit the New York Times bestseller list. The Voice says, it'll never last. The Voice says, wait, now they're going to read it. And the clinicians will start criticizing it, and they're going to find out. See, because when you're shame-based, it's always like this hunter is coming, and he's going to catch you. You're going to get off guard one day, and they're going to catch you. And they're going to find out that you really are flawed and defective, because that's what toxic shame feels like. Now, when you've been screamed at a lot or hit a lot when you're a child, you have these traumatic imprints, and it's just too painful. It's just too painful. What happens is you become hypervigilant. This was the study in the New York Times, that catastrophic experience, it almost like it presses the on button of the catecholamines, these hormones that prepare you to fight or flight, and it just stays on. So you're easily startled. You have all the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, and a lot of adult children do. We carry the same symptoms as post-traumatic stress disorder victims. We're hypervigilant, we're easily startled. I remember a few years ago being in a casino in Las Vegas. I'm talking about that several times here. Somebody came up to me, my brother said, they don't have our reservation, the airline doesn't have our reservations. I said, what? The airline doesn't have our reservations? You've got to be kidding. It's like, no big deal, come on. But that hypervigilant part of me, it's like that adrenaline surge is always going. And I fire that old frightened feeling. So what happens is, and this is one of the theories of what are called ego defenses. There's a guy named Melzack that has presented the theory of what he calls neuronal gates. And he says you can close the doors to these brain systems. You get up here in your thinking brain and you can close the door to your emotional brain. So you can get up here in your head, okay, and all these storms are going on down here. You don't even know that you've got this low-grade chronic depression. You don't even know you've got this rage in there because you're in your head all the time. And that's what I did. I got up in my head and survived. I became a university professor. I taught philosophy in the university. I taught Kant's critique of pure reason, the teleological suspension of the ethical, and Kierkegaard, the transcendental unity of apperception. No, that was Kant. The transcendental unity of our perception, all this stuff, which, to anybody but somebody interested is very boring. But boy, and now really, I love philosophy, and those are some of the greatest minds of all time, but we've got to understand that I could have gone to my death and never known how sad I really was. And you see, when I stopped mood altering, where there was nothing else, no other way to stay in my head, when there was nothing else that I could do. You know, I'd given up drinking, I'd given up smoking, I'd given up, well, I hadn't given up eating, but I was doing a lot. My addictions were pretty much, and then in those lonely moments, that's when that low-grade depression. When I got married, the rage would start coming out. And here was gentle John, here was good old boy John with all this rage. See, so it was like this brain, this part of my brain had cut off this part. Here's where all the original pain is. It's in this feeling brain. And in the segments you're going to see toward the end of this program, you're going to see people getting out of their head and getting into their emotions and doing this original pain work. In fact, what I call the journey to wholeness involves 4 parts. There's an action step. See, first of all, when we set up these ego defenses, we go into denial, we go into delusion, and we have to be confronted with that. It's like my alcoholism is what reduced me to pain, enough pain to say, hey, I got to do something about it. My life is unmanageable. My codependency, see, I was sober about 10 years, and I realized I was still trying to control all the relationships I was in. I was in my good guy, people-pleasing act. I was never really showing my feelings. I thought I was this wonderful dad, but I wasn't modeling any feelings for my son because I still wasn't in my feelings. I was doing counseling with people, but I guarantee you if you got in a feeling, I'd get you out of it. I'd reframe it for you. Or I would say, how long are you going to hold on to that? Or I had all these wonderful ways, and I was taught that to do that. Because, see, even our therapeutic models can be a way to avoid this emotional stuff. What we found in my treatment center at Ingleside Hospital is that if you haven't done the work, you can't take somebody there. You can't walk this walk if you haven't been there yourself. And I guarantee you, I did therapy with people for years and couldn't possibly have taken you there. I couldn't have possibly done this inner child workshop because I'd never done my own feeling work. The material you're listening to may affect your life and the lives of people you know. If you find this program important to you, please take the time to listen to what your local public television station has to say. Once we've changed behavior, once we've broken down the denial, changed behavior, if you're an addict, you've got to quit your addiction. Now, if you're an eating addict, you can't quit eating. If you're a sex addict, you don't have to never have sex for the rest of your life, but you've got to behavior modify, you've got to take action and do something about it. Then what I'm going to show you in the last segment of this program is this original pain feeling work. Inner child work is another form of original pain work. You're going to see very intense original pain work. You're going to see what we do in the treatment center. But I also do a form of inner child work, and a lot of people do. We do it in workshops. It's very powerful work, and I'm not saying that it's not powerful, effective, it doesn't change lives. It does. Some people need to do heavier work. A lot of that depends on the kind of abuse you had, like sexual and physical abuse and severe emotional battering are the worst. The chronicity of the abuse, how long did it go on? There's no mild abuse, but let's say the sexual abuse went on for 7 years, or somebody had an incident of sexual abuse. That's going to be different in terms of the intensity of the pain. And then here's an interesting one. Was there anyone in your childhood that you mattered to? Was there anyone? Children need to believe they matter. Children also need to believe their parents are okay. They're like two foundations of childhood. To believe your parents are really okay. See, if my parents are not okay, what's going to happen to me? So I couldn't have called a meeting and said, Dad, you're an alcoholic. Mom, you're a co-alcoholic. I'm moving down to the Smith's house at 3 years old. Now, later on in the programs we're going to do, I'm going to talk about corrective experiences when we talk about championing your inner child, or the cognitive work. See, a lot of people go from there to there and don't ever do this, or they jump into spiritual work. We're going to spend 2 times I will spend with you in future programs doing the spiritual work, talking about the spiritual work. But what we're going to focus on now is the original pain work. And I want to show you some segments that we taped in Houston. Jeannie Poole at the Center for Recovering Families got together 30 people. These are courageous people. They come from every walk of life. They are black, brown, white, male, female, rich, poor. And I've selected them, you know, and Jeannie helped me select people who could illustrate that these people have acted out all the different ways that the inner child acts out. You're going to see a man whose father deserted him. You're going to see a gal who was emotionally abused. Her mother never accepted her for who she was. You're going to see a gal that was incested, who's been acting that out in romance and sex addiction. And there's a wide variety in programs, in future programs. You're going to see people, bankers and engineers and people who were offenders holding teddy bears. You're going to see these people holding stuffed animals, because what we found is that by holding the stuffed animal, you've got one right there, by holding the stuffed animal, you can begin to access that inner child. You can begin to access the feelings. See, the inner child is your feelings, your needs, your wants. So many of us who are adult children don't know what we feel. We don't know what we need. We don't know what we want, because in those crazy families where violence was going on, or alcoholism was going on, or there was hypertension going on, you didn't have time to pay attention to your own internal cues. You were watching the veins in Mama's neck. Or you were wondering whether Daddy was going to be drunk, or whether he's going to be violent, or was he going to go into rage tonight? What was going to happen? Who was going to be controlling you? Could you have your feelings? And so you lost contact with your own internal cues. And that's another definition of codependency. The person who doesn't know what they feel, they don't know what they need, they don't know what they want. So we're going to focus on that original pain work. Now, I asked Kip Flock, who is the clinical director of my treatment center at Ingleside Hospital, I asked him to fly down to Houston and to do an hour of original pain work with people. And I am amazed that what you're going to see are people who knew they were on camera, they knew they were being filmed, but it's the most powerful stuff I've ever seen. That it happens even if you got cameras sticking in your face. And it's very, very powerful work. In the first segment, you're going to see Cindy, and Kip has just been talking to her, and she feels hopeless. She says, I feel hopeless. My mother will never love me for who I am. It's a perfect expression of the spiritual wound. So let's look now at the monitor and watch this work with Cindy.
It just seems hopeless sometimes.
Say more about the hopeless.
I just feel hopeless that my mother's just, she's never gonna accept me for who I am, and never, that I just won't be able to get her voice out of my head.
Okay. And say what the voice is saying, the mother's voice.
That you do everything for attention, and that you've caused all the problems in the family, and you're a bad person.
Okay. You want to do a little work with that voice? Okay.
Now, when Kip begins to work with her, what you're seeing is small segments. These people have been working longer than what you've seen. But she begins to role play her mother's critical, shaming voice, and then she starts answering it. It's going to look like she's hypnotized when we come back to this segment, but she's not. She has just gone into the age regression. That is the energy of the child. So let's look at this part.
Just allow yourself to be inside now. And say how old you are as you're talking to Mother.
I'm 5.
Okay, be 5 years old. Tell her what she does to you at 5 that shames you.
You shame and you yell at me.
Tell her what she says.
And you punish me. You say I'm a bad girl. And you ignore me and just leave me alone to cry. You don't hug me or comfort me. I'm just so tired of it.
And I'm angry at you for that.
And I'm angry at you for that.
Is that true?
I'm angry that you're not acting like you're supposed to. You're not acting like the mother you're supposed to act like. I want a mother that loves me, that cares, that isn't so critical.
I'm angry that you can't do it.
And I'm angry that you can't do it. I feel like it's killing me.
You're killing me.
You're killing me.
Say again.
You're killing me, Mother.
Again.
You're killing me.
And I'm going to stop you.
And I'm going to stop you.
Okay, stand up. Make your fist. Make your fist. Say more. I'm angry at you for and fill in the blanks. Just keep it going.
I'm angry at you for rejecting me. I'm angry at you for not loving me enough. I'm angry at you for not protecting me from your father.
Tell her what he did to you.
He abused me. You knew what he did to you and you didn't do anything about it.
And I'm angry at you for
And
that.
I'm angry at you for that.
Again.
And I'm angry at you for that.
Again.
I'm angry at you for that. I'm angry at you, Mom.
Good.
You're not there for me. I'm angry.
Go for her. She's right there. Right there.
Get out of my life. You're smothering me. You're killing me. You're smothering me.
And I won't let you.
I'm not going to let you anymore.
Take a breath. Take a breath. See if there's any more in there for right now.
Part of me just feels hopeless, like it's so hard to get out.
We'll stay out of that part right now and stay in your anger. Go back at her.
I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm
Right here.
angry.
Hit the bottom part. Hit the bottom part.
Angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry.
More sound.
I'm angry.
Let it come from way down in here.
Angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry.
Now just bring it down again and go, ha! Like that. Good. More. More sound. Good.
I don't feel as afraid.
Tell her that. I'm not afraid of you anymore.
I'm not afraid of you anymore.
I have my anger now.
I have my anger now
To protect me.
to protect me.
See, Cindy's fighting for her psychological life. I call this also original justice work, because the child in us is terrified and is most afraid to express anger. Think of how many of you could express anger as a child to a parent. What is anger? It's your protective energy. So what Kip does is he protects her, and he gives her permission to express the anger, which dislodges the energy that's keeping her 5 years old. That 5-year-old is frozen in there because she's never been able to finish and literally fight for her psychological life. She's being soul murdered by this critical, shaming, rejecting mama. So that's a part of the grief process. It's original pain, is expressing the anger. Another part of it is the sadness. The sadness. Now, men in our culture tend to have more trouble with this. You're going to see a piece now with Jim. Jim was totally abandoned by his father. Kip is going to ask him, what did it feel like to grow up without a father? And then he's going to help Jim get in touch with his own inner child and nurture his own inner child. So let's watch this piece.
Okay, if I take care. And let your fists be there as you're saying that. Say again.
I'm angry at you for abandoning me.
Focus on your stomach and your throat. Tell him what it was like to grow up without a dad.
It's awful. It's a feeling, it's like lost.
And let me know what's happening inside right now.
lost feeling. It's just lost again.
Lynette, would you come over here? Thanks. Come on over here, Jim. Just, here's little Jim. A little Jim that never had a daddy. Just be his daddy right now. The daddy he never had. And let him know that you're there for him.
I don't know what to do.
If you're okay with it, just reach over there and pull him over to you. And just close your eyes. And just picture him there. And say what he looks like.
Like your smile,
Good.
your eyes.
Maybe he needs to hear a commitment. I'm willing to be here for you at all costs.
I'm willing to be here for you at all costs.
I'll never abandon you.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't want to abandon you.
Well, let him know I'm going to learn how to stay with you.
I'm going to learn how to stay with you.
And tell him what you're doing to learn that.
I'm in recovery.
Good.
It hurts so bad. It hurts.
Yeah. Tell him I know you're hurting.
I know you're hurting.
And I'm letting you have your pain.
And I'm letting you have your pain.
Because I'm your daddy now.
Because I'm your daddy now.
See, since Jim had no father, he doesn't know how to parent, and he's afraid of parenting. What Kip does here is he takes the opportunity to teach him what nurturing parent is. He lets him have his pain and his hurt. Now, with his recovery program and his inner child work, he can learn to nurture the child inside of him. The next piece you're going to see is Rhonda. Rhonda, I talked earlier about enmeshment and sexual abuse. She's going to begin this piece by talking about her romance addiction and her sexual addiction as concealed ways of her little inner child trying to get her father's love. There's a scene here with her child where she believes she's not lovable unless her father loves her. So Kip's going to help her to get to those feelings about that. So let's take a look at that.
Part of my romance addiction and sex addiction and affairs with men is because I've always been looking for the father. You know, I'm just repeating it over and over and over. And that's how come I think I wanted to drink yesterday, because I'm pretty much committed not to acting out that way. And I really haven't drank very much in my life, but that's just like trading one addiction for the other, you know. And I know that's not good. I know I'm not going to do it. But my little child inside, since yesterday, is just reaching out. Food, alcohol, or men. You know, she's going back to those things that she's used before to try to feel better. And the closer I get to taking care of her myself, like yesterday I asked her if she wanted me to take care of her, then there's a lot of fear from that. Because I'm used to, you know, I'm used to men, or I still have that fantasy that my dad's going to take care of me. Oh, boy.
Rhonda, put Dad out here and tell him that.
always wanted you to take care of me. And you must not have, because I keep looking for somebody, some man to take care of me.
Tell him how much he hurt you.
You hurt me so much when you said you knew that something was going on with our family, that maybe there was some sexual stuff going on with me and Pop. You told me that 2 years ago.
Pop's your grandfather?
My mother's father. You told me that 2 years ago. When I called you a month ago to tell you how angry I was about that, you denied that you even said it. You told me you didn't think anything was ever going on.
And as you're saying that, you're feeling?
Angry! I'm sad and hurt.
Okay. Run over here. Run over here. And be the little girl that wants to change Daddy.
I don't want you to scream at me anymore.
Okay. I want you to talk to Rhonda right now. Tell her you've got to get Daddy to love you.
You've got to get Daddy to love you, because you don't matter unless he loves you.
Okay, there it is. There it is. There it is.
I wanted Daddy all to myself.
Okay. Move back over here. Answer that back. Answer her back.
You do matter. I do matter. I may not ever have his acceptance. I may not ever have his love.
Tell her. You may
not ever have his acceptance. You may not ever have his love. But you do matter.
And let her know what matters about her to you. Tell her how she matters.
You're so lovable.
Good.
You always were. Even though you showed your feelings, you were still lovable.
Now, Rhonda's work also illustrates the multi-generational character of toxic shame. Her mother was sexually and physically abused. Rhonda was sexually and physically abused. The abused child in her mother, it can't be there to take care of Rhonda. So what she does is try to set Rhonda up to take care of her. In this piece of work, Rhonda's going to work on breaking the enmeshment with her mother and carrying her mother's pain. She's going to reclaim her wounded inner child, and she's going to finish it by saying that I no longer need to matter to a man to be okay. So let's take a look at this.
Say what you're experiencing right now.
I'm just saying that I'm getting a visual picture of other men and how I've tried to get their acceptance to matter. And I learned it real well from my mother, too.
Of course.
Who was also incested by the same man, by her father. I used to see her in the car, when I was in the car with her, come up to a stop sign and look next door and see if there was a man in the car, and she would change her whole demeanor. She would change her whole way of acting. And as you could tell, as soon as they noticed her, then she got this high. And I learned that from really young.
Okay. Say what you're afraid of.
I'm scared of being enmeshed with my mother again.
I know. I know.
And taking care of her. I've been able to figure out over the last couple of years what happened to my mother. She committed suicide.
Tell her.
I'm doing here today.
Right.
Mother, I've been wondering why you committed suicide. I didn't know until I started working on my incest work, and I realized that you were incested by your father. And I realized from getting the nurses' notes, all the nurses and doctors' notes from the hospital, how it was painful and real hurtful to read them. But you were beaten.
Oh.
And you were emotionally abused. And somehow I feel responsible for that because I've always felt responsible for you.
You made me feel responsible for your pain. Tell her.
You made me feel responsible for your pain.
And it was shameless of you to act as though you weren't in pain.
And it was shameless of you to act like you weren't in pain and act like everything was okay. Well, I could never work out your pain for you.
And part of this pain is yours, Mom.
And part of the pain that I carry is yours.
And I'm giving you back your pain.
And I'm giving you back your pain.
Say again.
I'm giving you back your pain.
Say again.
I'm giving you back your pain. I don't want it anymore. I've got my own to deal with. I'm giving you back your pain.
Good. Say again.
I'm giving you back your pain. I am giving you back your pain. I cannot take it. I have my own to deal with. And I don't need attention from men to matter. And that feels good to say that.
Say, I feel good saying that.
I feel good saying that.
Say it again, then.
And I feel good saying that I don't need attention from men to matter.
Rhonda's work is illustrative of the fact that we're not trying to blame parents. We're trying to finish. We have to demythologize them and see them for the wounded people they were. Jim, Rhonda, Cindy have all been soul murdered. They want to cry out. They wanted as children to cry out, but they were too terrified to do so, so the energy gets frozen. Then they act it out in their reenactments. So by helping them feel the feelings and discharge the original pain, they don't have to act it out anymore. And that's the healing work that the original pain is. Now, join me again next time when I'll show you another kind of work, though less intense, for reclaiming the inner child. Being loved as the very one you are is something that many of us didn't get as children, leaving us feeling worthless to the core. In this episode, you'll see how your infancy needs were not met and how this affects your adult life. By using meditations, affirmations, and guided imagery, you'll journey back in time to reclaim your weakest and most helpless self, thus catapulting you toward wholeness and increased personal power.
Bradshaw on Homecoming is made possible by viewers like you and by Transamerica Fund Management, the mutual fund company that's been helping investors reach their financial goals for over 40 years. Additional funding is provided by the following organizations and individuals.
Welcome to the show, folks. I want to talk now about reclaiming our inner infant. In a previous program, I talked about original pain, and we talked about heavy, intense feeling work. That kind of work is not for everyone. It depends on the kind of abuse, the extent of the abuse that people have gone through. There are other ways for us to do this original pain, reclaiming our inner child work. And in this program, I want to show you one of the ways that I do it in my workshops, where we talk about helping people to be welcome to the world and reclaim the infant child that we once were. There are people who were not welcome to the world, who did not feel welcome to the world. And it's a very sad kind of thing for someone to come into the world and not be welcome to the world. I want to talk about how wonderful children are, how precious they are. I mean, think about a little child you've seen at some time in your life where you just wanted to go see them again. It's like they're so fascinating, they're so fantastic, and there's just something unique about every child. And of course, as parents, we always think our kid is beautiful, even though others may not. We think that this is the most beautiful child we've ever seen. Hopefully we do. There are people who are born whose moms and dads do not think that. I've quoted this a lot, but this is one of my favorite poems, and I first heard Buckminster Fuller quote this. It is by Christopher Marley, this poem. And the poem says, "The greatest poem ever known is one all poets have outgrown. The poetry innate, untold, of being only 4 years old. Born comrade of bird, beast, and tree, and unself-conscious as the bee. Still young enough to be a part of nature's great impulsive heart. And yet with lovely reason skilled, each day new paradise to build. Elate explorer of each sense, without dismay, without pretense. In your unstrained, transparent eyes, there is no conscience, no surprise. Life's queer conundrums you accept, your strange divinity still kept. And life that sets all things in rhyme may make you poet too in time. But there were days, O tender elf, when you were poetry itself." And that's true of every single one of us. We come into the world and we're poetry itself. We're this little bundle of wonderfulness. We're full of wonder. The world is brand spanking new. And all we want really is a chance. And unfortunately, so much of our early life depends on who our parents are and the state of our parents, their mental health. I've been drawing these little people on here, people that are adult children. And I've been showing you how, for example, this person may have a wounded child inside of them, so that they look like an adult, they talk like an adult, they walk like an adult, but there's a little child inside who never got his or her developmental needs met. And suppose they have a little child. Suppose they have a little child. It's going to be very difficult for this needy, unfinished, dependent child inside this adult to be able to take care of this child. How many children do you know who would like to take care of another child? Or think of when you were a little kid and you had to take care of your little brother or your little sister. So this little baby comes into the world just full of wonder, full of all the magnificent traits of being a wonderful little child. This little baby has a sense of wonder. The world is brand new. It's exciting. Everything is to be explored. Let's eat it. Let's smell it. Let's taste it. In another program, we're going to talk about that early exploratory stage of the toddler, and how, if you didn't get your needs met in that stage, you may have a hard time initiating things, or when you go to a new place, it'll be hard for you to venture out. I write about being at a port in Le Havre, France last year, and my daughter, my stepdaughter, who's just this wonder, still has this wonder child, and she said, let's don't go on the cruise bus to Paris. Let's take the train. We can get there an hour early. And I go, okay. And then all night I lay there tossing and turning, fantasizing that maybe the train will derail, maybe it won't be on time, and then the ultimate fantasy is it won't get back and the ship will leave without us. These are my abandonment fears coming out. And it turned out I didn't go. I didn't go with her on the train. I barely slept that night worrying about the train. You see, this sense of wonder and exploring, and you're in a place, let's go look, and let's go touch and taste and smell, and sensory acuity. Children have this sensory acuity. They really see, and they see colors, and they touch and taste, and people then have to, if you don't get to maintain those traits of the child, most of us get numbed out. We don't see what we see. We don't hear what we hear. We don't feel what we feel. We don't smell what we smell. And when we talk about championing the child, I'm going to show you some exercises you can do to work on getting back to that. So this sense of wonder, the world is brand new every day. Everything is interesting. Remember in Zarba, the movie where he says, look at the dolphin! Look at the dolphin! He's out of his gourd over a dolphin. And he's just all excited. He's jumping up and down like a child. Or like when you first went to the zoo to see things. The children are optimistic. Now, these very traits go both ways. Children have a natural sense of trusting their environment because they have a natural sense of I amness. I talked about the spiritual wound in an earlier program. That sense of I am who I am. And children are born with that organismic sense of I am who I am. I can remember my son at an early age, when we were going out real young. Who's going to take care of me? He's going to, he's got this sense of I'm very important, and who's taking care of me? Have you worked that out yet? Before we go on with these plans, let's be sure someone's taking care of me. Naivete, this is why children can be so terribly hurt with abuse, because they are naive and they are trusting. And for example, in certain kinds of sexual abuse, where it feels good to a child, and yet there's a fear, and yet there's an outcry at some level. Like I've seen a lot of people from dysfunctional families who are addicted to fear, and they confuse fear and excitement. They confuse fear and excitement because growing up, that naivete, they were violated. And then children are naturally dependent. This is one of the basic problems, is that for 6 or 7 years, we are the most dependent of all animals for our developmental needs. We simply can't get our needs met. I would say one of the goals of life is personal power. Personal power means that I have control over my life. I can reasonably predict what I'm going to do with my life. Joseph Campbell talked about that as finding your bliss, doing what you want with your very own life, and knowing where you're going with your very own life. That's personal power. A child is powerless. A child is dependent. The needs of a child are dependency needs. What that means is that the child is dependent on this person to get his or her needs met. They are deficiency needs that you can't get them met. As adults, we can get our needs met. Now, it may be hard sometimes, but we have the power to do it. A child does not. So I'm going to talk a lot about the neglect of developmental dependency needs, and that this is one of the reasons children are so vulnerable to abuse, to any kind of abuse in that first 6 or 7 years. And one of the things that happens when children are shamed, because we're going to talk in a minute about the bond that is established in a healthy infancy, the mirroring, echoing, trusting bond that comes through touching and holding. When that bond is broken through toxic shame, through hitting, through screaming, through whatever the abuse is, when that bond is broken, one of the things that happens is that we quit believing that we can depend on anybody. In my own recovery from my own alcoholism, it took me 14 months to be able to make a year in a 12-step program for alcoholism. And I wouldn't call anybody. People were giving me their phone numbers. They were saying, you know, I'm here to support you. I'm here to help you. But you see, that shame base in me, I didn't believe that I had the right to depend on anybody. Because once those dependency needs are broken in your life, you quit believing that you can depend on anybody. Emotions. Children are emotional. I've talked in a previous program about the primacy of emotion, that the emotional brain, the tripartite brain, we have a visceral brain, an emotional brain, and a thinking brain. And these brains develop, many think they recapitulate the evolutionary process. This is the reptilian brain, and it's very much the visceral brain, concerned with instinct. It's very much concerned with repetition. A lizard's deal is going out every morning, eating a few mosquitoes, getting home without getting eaten yourself. When he does that, he's had a good day, and he will never forget the path. So your reptilian brain is a part of you that will not go on the freeway. I've always gone home this way, and I'm going to continue to go home this way. It takes an hour longer, but I'm not getting on that freeway. The emotional brain. So children, and we have two emotions. We weep. Human beings weep. Other animals cry. They don't weep. They don't shed tears. Fry and his associate found chemicals, hormones in tears that reduce stress. So it's very important for brain chemistry to be able to be emotional, to be able to weep. And it's weeping that draws us to a child. And nature provides children with loud voices, very loud voices. I mean, here I am, a child advocate sitting on an airplane the other day. I'd have thrown this kid out, I think. I've never heard a child with such a loud voice. And it's just, I mean, boy, they get your attention. And the other emotion we have is laughter. Weeping and laughter. And the other emotion we have that no other animal has is shame. Healthy shame. So these are specifically human emotions that all children have. Resilience. I watched a little film that Ashley Montague, who wrote a wonderful book called Growing Young, and I'm going to talk about that in a later program, what he calls neotomy, the childlike traits, and how the most the civilizations he's studied that have survived the longest are those that have these childlike traits, maintain childlike traits. But he shows this little 5-minute film of this child trying to get up on a couch. Kid keeps falling down, just keeps climbing back up, keeps falling down, keeps climbing back up, finally gets up there. And pretty proud of herself, or I can't remember if it's a little boy or a little girl, but then a dog comes in the room. Kid looks the dog over, gets down off the couch, and the dog kind of nudges the child. The child goes, "Bah!" See, now that's courage. And children naturally have courage. Rudolf Dreikers talks about all misbehaving children are discouraged children. Children who had the courage, the heart. See, core ego is to have heart. So children have heart, and they love to play, and playing is a way that they accommodate and assimilate. They play, a broom becomes a little horsey. Now, you know, some of us have lost the capacity to play. And when we talk about championing your inner child, I'm going to talk about new rules and new permissions that you give yourself. And one of them is the permission to play. And you can play all you can. There's no limit on this. Nobody's got a time limit that says you played long enough. See, because in the system I was brought up in, if you were having a great time, they would look at their watch and say, "I think we've had enough fun." I I think it's time now. 2 minutes, I'm right into it. I'm just getting rolling. See, so I used alcohol, I used drugs as a way to be able to play. When I sobered up, I went to a dance, I could hardly move my buttocks. I was so muscle bound and numbed out. It's like, okay, but a few drinks and I'm up on the table dancing. And so it's real important. Uniqueness, that there's no two people are alike. There's no two thumbprints alike. We're utterly unique. You could go back 1 million years, you'd never find anybody like you. 10 million years. Every little baby's unique. And we need to maintain that uniqueness. See, what's the difference that makes the difference? And I'm going to show you in this program and other programs just how important it is to embrace that child within yourself. That, like I have an exercise I do, and I have people see somebody they love come in the room, and they feel all tingly and excited. And I say, see yourself walk in the room. And people start going, oh, God, look at that gut. Look at, but I say, see a child walk in the room. See a little child walk in the room. The child you once were. Oh, and we can do better with that. Most people can really do better with that. So one of the ways we're going to reconnect with ourselves is to reclaim this child that lives in us. See, what Walt Disney understood better than anybody is that while there's very little adult in a child, there's an enormous amount of child in every adult. If you don't believe that, go to Disneyland. The first time I went there was 40 adults to every kid. And I'm going, where are the kids here? Well, all the kids were there. And this little child is naturally loving. I think that we have this life spark. And this life spark moves toward what Nietzsche called Übermensch, overcoming, expanding. That life is always trying to expand itself. We're always becoming. See, in one of the previous programs, Original Pain, and the program where I talked about the wounded inner child, I talked about the reenactment cycles, that you keep acting out the cycles. And see, you act out the scenes, the scenes of abuse, because a child gets those scenes imprinted in their brain. And so you'll keep picking a person who's abusive. You keep picking a person who was like that parent that abused you. But at one level, that's also a positive thing. Even though it's painful and destructive, it's the child trying to work it out. It's the life spark trying to complete the past, trying to finish it. See, so if I can, okay, but this guy is going to be just like Dad, but this time I'm going to be perfect, I'm going to be loving, or this time I'm going to be with this woman and she's not going to engulf me. She's going to be there and she's going to nurture me and she's going to be nourishing. But what? This little child doesn't have a self, so the wounded inner child keeps picking the same kind of person, keeps picking out the same kind of person. Now, this infant child, when he or she comes into the world, has very specific needs. And the most important need, your infancy needs came up when you walked in this theater. That is, if you have never been here before, those of you who have never been here before, your infancy needs came up because it was a brand new place. And what you needed to hear, as you needed to hear when you came into the world, is welcome to the world. Welcome to the theater. We're really glad you're here. We will take care of you as best we can while you're here. Everything's going to be okay. See, that's what we needed to hear when we came into the world. And we needed a face that when we looked at that face, this mothering face, that when I looked up at that face, every part of me was reflected back. So when I looked up, these are what are called mirroring needs, echoing needs. Child needs to look into that face and have unconditional positive regard. Now, the fact that probably none of us got that perfectly doesn't mean we still didn't deserve it. That any child born to man, woman deserves that unconditional love. That the parenting is the hardest job anybody's going to ever do. We really need to be prepared for it. You need a lot more than a blood test to do this job. And as I've said many times, we allow a 15-year-old to do it without any training whatsoever. We give a person operating the telephone more training than we do a mom and a daddy for the hardest job that they will ever do in their life. Now, there's a kind of a happy sign that people are waiting later to have children. They're becoming more prepared to have children, realizing what a responsibility is. And I want to underscore it, that this work that I do is not about bashing parents. It's not about blaming parents. Blaming is just to cover up for shame. That's not what it's about. It's about accountability, though. It's about finding out what really happened to us, because you cannot heal something unless you know what it is. Nothing changes until it becomes real. And if you didn't get your developmental dependency needs met, you better know it. So like the courage of those people that were sharing in the program we did on original pain, you're going to see some people in this program sharing. Their courage and their honesty, I'm very indebted to these people, because it may encourage you and others, people watching, to demythologize their parents and to accept the truth of their childhood. That probably none of us have gotten the kind of needs met that we need to have. I can't imagine anybody coming out of that. This kid couldn't possibly get these needs met. This kid that has this mirroring face to look up into. This kid can't possibly get these needs met because mama's an adult child herself. At some level, suppose mother didn't get her infancy needs met. These are called your narcissistic needs. What does that mean? It means that, like Narcissus, who looked in the mirror and saw his face and fell in love with himself, every baby has a right to have reflected back that every part of me is okay. Every part of me is okay. See, if I look in that face and my anger is rejected, then my anger is over here. So I am beside myself with anger. I am beside myself. One part of me is over here and my anger's over there. Or when you're in little pink ribbons, or you're in little corduroy or little velvet suits, you're adorable. But then you potty on yourself. Not so adorable. We have to be able to look in that face and have every part reflected back. Otherwise, those parts split off. And then we start projecting those onto other people. Or they become more and more primitive. That is, they're not part of me. I'm not integrated. I'm not self-accepted. So I have these parts of myself that I don't accept. And then it may be anger, and that anger over the years becomes rage. It becomes more and more primitive. That's what happened to me. I was never allowed to have my anger. It was one of the 7 deadly sins. When I went to Catholic school, Sister Ida passed actual pictures of hell around the room. We don't know where she got them, but my buddy and I thought she was there and had made a deal with the devil to come torment us. Now, she was a wonderful woman, Sister Ida, and I'm not blaming her either. She thought this is the way to scare the hell out of us. And believe me, it did. But it was sort of the idea at the time that this is the way you get kids to behave. But what happened is that all that rage was never mirrored back. And so the other thing a child needs to know is that I can trust the world, that the world is trustworthy, that you will be there for me, and I can have hope that I can get my needs met. See, if this child who is needy, this child is needy by nature, not by choice. It has a mother who has a needy child. What's going to happen when that kid's needy? I'll tell you what happens to most kids in dysfunctional families when they're needy. They don't get their needs met. The parent gets angry. I would be willing to bet, if you're from a dysfunctional family, that when you were the neediest, that's when you got shamed the most. When you most needed a compassionate adult to hold you and be there for you. Because what you did is you triggered the neediness in this parent. Now, I have some indexes of suspicion that I use. Did you get your infancy needs met? Ingestive addictions like overeating. You want to see eating disorders in the make? Watch. Here's mama, here's a little baby crying. Stick something in their mouth. Here's the way to solve that. Eat your sadness. Eat your anger. So we're learning from very early ages to eat our feelings and not to feel the feelings. Those of you that saw the original pain program, Kip is right there encouraging Jim, who's working, who says it's so painful. His inner child says it's so painful. Kip says, that's good. Be a good daddy. Just let him have his pain. Let him have his pain. Let him have his sadness. Don't discount him by taking it away from him. Let's look on the bright side. Taking the pain away so you can't connect with yourself. Mistrust of people, because trust is the most important issue for this child. That I can trust the world. Einstein on his deathbed said, there's only one important question, and that is the universe friendly? That's an awful important question. And see, every child coming in the world has got to figure out, is this crowd, is this a friendly place? When I come in here, is this a safe, friendly place? So mistrust of people, which will come out in the need to control, out of touch with physical needs. Like sometimes I hit a bed, I don't even know how tired I am. Somebody asked me on a TV show recently, have you ever had an out-of-body experience? And I thought for a minute, and I thought, my gosh, I've hardly ever been in my body. Alcoholism isn't about thirst. And eating addictions are not about being hungry. And sexual addictions are not about being horny. This isn't what they're about. They're about this spiritual wound that the wounded inner child carries. Deep fears of abandonment. Suicidal if a relationship ends. You can't leave anything. You carry notes for every time you move, you carry all this stuff with you because you can't let anything go out of fear of abandonment. Continual need to be admired. See, that's that narcissistic need. And guess what? If you didn't get that from your mama, guess one of the things you can do? You can make your child be the object of your narcissistic gratification. Alice Miller wrote probably the most important book that I've read in the last 30 years, called The Drama of the Gifted Child, about how narcissistically deprived parents farm and defarm the emotional life of their children. Meaning by that if mother didn't get her narcissistic needs met, that is her needs for admiration, guess who she'll set up to admire her? Her children. And boy, she'll do it till she dies. She'll be calling you for the next 60 years. And let's have some respect for me. And a lot of us, some people had very devoted parents and didn't realize they were being used as their parents' narcissistic supplies. And that's the spiritual wound, because you were not loved for the one you are. See, use is abuse. Whenever you're being used, you're being abused. A child cannot know he or she is being abused, being used. Child can't know it. Basically, a child can't know they're being abused. How do you know what abuse is? Who's teaching you about life? Who's modeling life for you? Your parents. So they've got all the knowledge. They know where Baskin-Robbins is. What do you know? So if they say, I'm doing this for your own good, why would you argue with that? So one of the adult issues that happens, you're gullible, you swallow things whole, one of the adult issues is that you have narcissistic problems. You have this continuous need to be admired. So you get in a relationship and you drive the person crazy. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? How do you know you love me? How do you know you... And finally they're going, no, I don't love you. I'm sick of you. And so you can't understand why this person left you, because they can't take it anymore. And sexual narcissism. See, we're getting a lot of love addiction. If you didn't get this primary bonding, see, the primal scene is a face, gazing into a face. It's one of the reasons groups are so powerful, because there's lots of faces in groups. Motion manifests in the face. Manifests in the face. So when I sit in a group of people and look at faces, there's a power that happens. Like you're going to see this on some videotape in this show today. You're going to see what happens in a group where people just sit in a group and they tell each other certain affirmations. And the power of these affirmations is just awesome. How it can touch people. And how when you sit there with a group of people It can bring up feelings in a way that nothing else can. Now, when you fall in love with somebody, guess what happens? You go back to primal gazing. You ever been around lovers? You're sitting there talking to them, and they're staring at each other, and you're going, hey, I'm here, can you see me? And it's wonderful. See, and a lot of people really are into love addiction because it's this wonderful mood alteration. When you're in your love, you're out of your gourd. You're oceanic. All the boundaries collapse. And you go back to this primal kind of oceanic oneness. You go back to infancy symbiotic bonding. You talk baby talk. So love addiction, a lot of addiction, lost child that you weren't accepted. Sort of the message to you was, get lost, child. That you were never accepted for the very one you were, and you knew it early on. See, children need to know how to matter. Some kids get it very early on, that the way to matter around here is get lost. Play in your room, be quiet, don't make any noise, be invisible. In therapy, when we work with lost kids, they're often invisible. I'll say, where's Joe? And he's right there in front of me. But somehow they have so got it that the only way I can stay here, the only way I'm wanted is if I get lost. So it's a very, very powerful kind of abuse that happens to people who didn't get their infancy needs met. If you feel this kind of program is important to you or someone you know with some of these indexes of suspicion, one of the ways I do this, some of you saw this in the program on original pain. Maybe you didn't see it, but it was one of the programs in this series where you saw powerful feelings being expressed. Well, I'm going to show you now some other ways to do this work, and we're going to start with a segment which is an age regression. Now, a lot of the contaminations of the wounded inner child are age regressions. When you're overreacting, when you're temper tantruming, when you're pouting, you're in age regressions. So don't let age regressions scare you. Although when you see this work on here, you're just going to see a piece of it, and there's some cautions I would make. If a person is in therapy, working with a therapist, I wouldn't encourage you to try this kind of work on your own if you don't have your therapist's permission. If you've been pronounced mentally ill, this would not be a good thing to be doing on your own without some kind of guidance. I would say if this work scares you in any way, just don't touch it. Please don't touch it. The age regression is really something we do quite naturally. Milton Erickson used to say we go in and out of trance all day. Anytime you're in concentration, you're in a trance. That is, you're going into a trance. The importance of age regression is that up to about 6 or 7, we don't remember anything because we were in another state of consciousness. We were magical, we were non-logical, we were egocentric. We lived with felt thought. It was Winnie the Pooh and Tigger too. And we were barn comrades of bird, beast, and tree, and unself-conscious as the bee. So we have to do exercises to get us back in touch, to access the inner child. And what you're going to see on this tape is part of a segment of me working with a group of people in Houston, the Center for Recovering Families, doing an age regression where they're going back and they're touching the energy. Ronald Lang said we're all in a post-hypnotic trance induced in early infancy. So we want to touch that because this part of you made major decisions about yourself. This child part of you made major decisions. And one of the values of working with the child is that you can change those decisions. So I want you to look at this piece now. Let's take a look at this. There was a time long, long ago, a once upon a time, when we were all there, waiting to be born. You had everything you needed to have. In every way you were perfect. Get a feeling of it. Was this a happy time? Were you welcome to the world? And who was there for you? Or maybe who wasn't there? Just get a sense of what it felt like to be born into this family that you came into. And just let yourself feel whatever it is you feel. You're going to hear the things that you needed to hear from this group of supporting people who are here for you now. This little family that's here for you now. They're going to be telling you what you needed to hear. You may not have heard these things when you came into the world, and you needed to hear them. And you need to hear them now, that you are welcome, that you are loved for the very one that you are, that it's okay to be you, that you have all the time you need, that your feelings, your sadness is okay, and you can have it. Nobody's